Everybody, welcome back. I've got Coach Michael McElroy. Now, my first question has to be, is it Mike or is it Michael?
We'll go with Mike. It was Michael until I was like 22, and then it's Mike from now on.
Perfect. Because I've seen so many different people call you so many different things. So cool. So, Mike, what I'm asking all of our coaches to open the conversation with is, how do you uniquely help your clients, and why has that proven to be really beneficial?
Yeah, I would say, ironically, it comes back to why we coach, and we've talked about this a lot. Whether it's in the CCP courses or just in our coach development or whatever, but why we coach, and we talk to our athletes about why they train and why they do things. But one of the big reasons of why I coach is to help develop confidence in people. I saw early on, my dad was a consciously putting helping me develop confidence as I grew up. And it was a conscious effort that he was aware of and that I was aware of. And we've talked about it since. And I only more recently realized how important that's been in my life and my development, as far as like being able to approach life with that confidence and do things and accomplish things. And then seeing the other hand of that with clients that don't have that, and how it inhibits them from living a full life. And so that was part of the reason I started coaching in the first place, even though I didn't realize it. And then now that I'm more conscious of it, it's something that I definitely try to develop and try to see in people, either pick up pieces where they have confidence and promote that, or figure out things that they're more um, uh, inhibited by or fearful of in their approach, and try to pick apart like why that is and how can we get more confidence in that.
Can you give us an example of how you and your dad used to work on confidence?
I mean, an example, I mean, mostly it was really just conversation. I mean, he would literally sit down and tell us, like in sport, and mostly it revolved around sport. Um, but like he always said, you have to be confident without being cocky. And
I
so
know that one.
you can't be arrogant. You can't be just think you have it all, but you have to be confident in your abilities, and you have to know or believe that you belong there, and you should win. And so I grew up as a golfer, and obviously if you're at all familiar with golf or any kind of individual sport that's such a skill sport like that, a lot of it comes down to what's between the ears. The talent level, the physical talent level, once you get to a certain level, is all pretty close. It's who can overcome their brain better than the next person. And so there were a lot of conversations we had after a bad round of golf, or going into a tournament that was maybe a little bit bigger setting than I was used to. And we would just talk about being confident in my abilities, and reflecting on the numbers that I'd shot before, the scores that I'd shot before, and saying, you do belong here, and you do belong with these other guys that you kind of look up to. So you have to embrace that and go forward with it. So
When you're working with the client, what might give you insight into a lack of confidence? What might you see from a client that would tell you that?
Comparison for one thing. And so when I get their feedback and they say, or maybe I give them a score to shoot for, and maybe I give a name with it. So like just recently, I sent a workout to somebody and said, Colleen did this workout and she did this on this. And if their response is like, okay, well then I should be a minute or two behind them. It's like, well, like, why can't you be equal to her? And or if it's just a movement or a workout that I know they should be confident in, and they send back reservation with like, do you think I can do this unbroken, or do you think I can do this in this amount of time? And their reserve with that, as opposed to their willingness and ability to just attack it with we always say, like, just be an athlete and just go and do it. If they have that approach to it, then I know that they're confident in it. And if they rarely have that approach when I think they should, then it's something we dig into a little bit more.
Interesting. So two things. You mentioned for yourself the dichotomy between confidence and cockiness. I think that's super interesting. And then somebody comparing versus not comparing. How do you figure out what the sweet spot is for people? So it's like, how do you not sway too far into cockiness? And then how do you not sway maybe too far away from comparison or something like that? How do you find the sweet spot?
Yeah, I think ironically it comes down to the individual, but because I think there is a degree of cockiness that comes with that, especially if we're talking about sport. Like when you go into a sport, you have to be willing to say like, I'm better than you, and I'm about to prove it to you that I'm gonna beat you. Like you have to have that mentality, and for whatever reason, I don't find a lot of people that have that mentality anymore, and I don't know what it is that restricts them from having that when I think they should. Like I think I had less physical ability than certain people that I beat, and I was able to beat them because of that thing. And so that's another reason I kind of went into this search of like what separated me and other athletes even more. Like what separates Rich Froning. Obviously he's got a great physical ability, but like he's got something different in his brain that makes him do what he does. And so how can we get that in those persons? And so I have certain people in my head, but when I have somebody that doesn't have that confidence and they're not even close to erring on the side of too cocky, then that's pretty much all I pumped at them. Like try to push them up, try to give them confidence, try to give them things that create that confidence, and almost try to create those things and tell them things that will almost give them a little bit of cockiness. Like, no, you should beat this person every time, hands down. And like when you go compete with them this weekend, like you should crush them, and you should know that going into it that you're going to do that. As opposed to, I guess, and I've only had this, I can think on the top of my head, like 1 or 2 times where they err on the side of too cocky and too arrogant, where I have to pull them down a little bit. I think that's just realistic numbers coming down to it and saying like, I know you're confident in this thing, but like so-and-so can do 30 unbroken muscle ups and you only have 20. So like this workout's mainly muscle up workout. He's probably going to put up a good fight for you, or whatever the case may be. I think I addressed the confident and cocky. I don't remember the back end of that question.
No, I actually, do you think that in today's day and age where so much is now on social media and so much is about the profile and everything, do you think that projection of what people want the world to see them as, do you think that could potentially get in the way of, let's call it the base foundation of what you're defining as confident?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, even it's crazy how much that's changed, right? Because even when we were growing up, like it just wasn't there. And it's not like we're old, but it's just changed so fast that wasn't there at all then. And so it plays all kind of mind games because the comparison is way more. So they think they have to be a certain thing, and they think that every session that the people they're comparing to looks like what they put on social media. And they think that every day is, rainbows and sunshine, and it's just not the case for most people. So, and like you said, there's a degree of like expectation that they put on themselves because nobody else puts it on them. It's just them putting on themselves. And so, yeah, and we've talked about this before as a kind of a company, but I mean, the people that aren't obsessed with social media tend to do a little bit better, just in general, like
sure,
however you want to define better. But the people that are overly obsessed with social media, it can be a short road for a lot of them.
Isn't that such a tough place to be, particularly in a CrossFit world where social media is often a form of money making, right? It's a difficult place for folks to be. I can certainly empathize with that position. While I'm certainly not making money on social media, that's for sure. I can understand how an athlete would be in that position. So let me switch gears for a second. So you were in golf. What actually ultimately got you interested in just purely fitness or CrossFit? Because you're also a high-level CrossFitter, if people don't know that. So how did you make that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't good enough to play the next level of golf. That's basically it. No, I mean, I was always into fitness. Even when I was playing golf, just it looked different. When I was playing golf in high school, I did chest and tries like 3 days a week, and that was it, which has no benefit to golf whatsoever. But that's what I did. So I was always into fitness. And then when I went to college, I decided not to play golf in college and started doing CrossFit then. And in fact, that was before it was a sport or anything like that. And so as it developed, I continued in CrossFit, and then the sport came about, and I started following Big Dog blogs and things like that, and just that was just kind of the natural progression. I'm competitive by nature. I wasn't doing golf anymore competitively, and so just looking for another competitive outlet, basically.
Yeah, it seems like so many people, be them big dogs coaches or athletes for that matter, really love the idea of growth through fitness, right? And so there's so much that can be done through expressing yourself in some form of an athletic way. So tell people what you're actually interested in now, because I think this is awesome. So what are you doing in October?
Yeah, I'm doing a half Ironman. I want to back up just a little bit real quick, but the journey and the progression of I forget the word you just even mentioned, but just self-expression in fitness. It's kind of funny you say that, because that's where it started. Like I said, it wasn't even a sport at the time. So it was just like this thing where we're like, we're better than everybody else because we do CrossFit, because we can do anything and everything. You know, that was what CrossFit was in the beginning. And so it was just this expression of like, how good can I get at everything? And then it became a sport, which became kind of cool because it was comparison and competing at that point. But it really came down to like, how fit can I be?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, you know, kind of the same thing. I'm not good enough to compete in the sport of CrossFit anymore. So like, I was looking for another kind of outlet of competing. And so it's been a couple of years since I've competed in the sport with any seriousness and really anything. I went back to golf a little bit last year and playing that a little bit more than I was, but I've got a lot of triathletes around me, and it's something that's challenging. And I've had this conversation with some people, but challenging in a new way, because we talk about being comfortable with uncomfortable, and I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable in the sport of CrossFit. You know, I know what thrusters and burpees feel like. I know what rowing and pull-ups feel like. I know what that uncomfort feels like, and I know that it's going to end. And I'm like, it's not a big deal anymore. What I don't know is if I can even swim 1.2 miles and then bike 56 miles and then run a marathon, half marathon. So the uncertainty of that comfort, or the uncertainty of that discomfort, is what kind of drives me to that. I've always said I would like to do a full. I don't think that's in the cards right now with 3 kids under the age of 5, but my wife might kill me if I did that, but I can get away with the half.
I just saw your eyes, and you legitimately thought about it. You're like, what would she think?
Yeah.
No, that's not going to work right now.
No, it's 95% not the time to do it right now. So I can kind of get away with the volume of training with the half Ironman. And thankfully, you know, with remote coaching and the gym that I have set up here, like I have the flexible schedule where I can do more of, like, I'm doing my long session on Friday instead of the weekend. So I can be home on the weekend, even if I'm on the computer a little bit more on the weekend, doing some work, I can at least be present. And so there's some flexibility there that makes it work, because the volume, I mean, you can't avoid it in the sport, just like you really can't avoid it in the sport of CrossFit if you really want to be serious about it. But you know, I've done a half marathon before, which is less than 2 hours of work. And so you can really skimp on that volume and still suffer through it and get away with it. You can't do that for a half Ironman. Like, it's going to be like, the goal is under 6 hours. So you can't just tough that out, really. So
how would,
it's a new challenge.
If you had a client that didn't have the understanding of, let's just call it pain, right? They didn't understand the pain of either CrossFit or a half Ironman. How would you wean them into that? Like, how would you get them able to understand that amount of pain? You know, because getting to a high level at either sport, it takes a while, right? And people often want to just jump right in, head over heels, and get right into it. But A, how long does it take? And B, how would you kind of start that process of having them touch that pain point?
Yeah, I mean, I will have trained for about 6 months when the race gets here, which is not enough time, honestly. And that's with my background of a fairly decent volume, not on run, bike, swim, but cumulative volume of work. And so I'm used to doing, like you said, I'm used to training hard. I did 2 a days for 6 years. And so like I'm used to a decent amount of volume. So I was able to adapt fairly quickly to, sitting on the bike for 2 to 3 hours. If they don't come from either of those backgrounds of pain, the first thing I would honestly ask is like, why are they doing it? So I have a friend that's actually doing it with me who doesn't compete. She does CrossFit, but she doesn't compete at all, not competitive at all. And she's not doing the race to compete. She's doing it to say that she accomplished it. And as we know, that's a totally different mindset. And I don't think they need to be, aware of that pain or what it's going to, like, because it's a different kind of pain, right? Like they're going to approach it. And if it starts getting too uncomfortable, they're just going to slow down. Whereas to like our competitive mindset, so those competitive are like, there's a person up there, I think I can catch them. That's where our brains go. And so we do get into that pain a lot earlier. But like my wife talked about doing it, and there was no competitive component to it. And like her training was going to look the same way. It was just easy rides, easy swims, easy runs. And there was never really a threshold training or pain training or anything like that, because it wasn't necessarily needed. So that's where the conversation would go first, is like, why are we even doing this? If it was just to accomplish it and have fun and have a good day, then we just got to get comfortable with the volume at whatever pace that is that you can finish and get comfortable there. And if we want to race and be more competitive and like see what you're actually capable of, then that's a different conversation. But for most people, especially if they're getting into triathlons, they're probably a little bit older. And if they are in that kind of mindset, they've probably done something in the past where they are used to that pain or comfortable with that pain.
Yeah, well said, man. That was really well said. So let me shift gears one more time. I've been asking this kind of for the first round of these interviews, but what's really fascinating to you in the fitness arena right now that you're digging into?
In the sport or in fitness in general?
I would love to say you pick, but we can break this into two, because you've got, I'm sure, good things on both. Let's talk about sport of fitness right now. What's really fascinating to you in that arena right now?
Well, I mean, obviously top of head is just all the changes that are going on in the sport. But with that, people's approach to the sport now, because to me, it's actually becoming, while there's lack of leadership and lack of like construction of what's going on, it can be, if it goes the right direction, it can be turning into more of a sport. So what we saw at some of the sanctionals was really interesting, because it brought a new component to the weekend competition, because it was like we would be there and we're like, all right, this person's already qualified, this person's already got a spot, so we need to beat this person and this person. So there was a different nuance to the game, for lack of better words, and it was more of like a game. And like, we need to go to this competition because there's probably going to be less people here, or they need to go to this competition or whatever. And so there was a little bit more like configuration to your season and who you're going to compete against and why you're going to compete. Like Rogue is probably going to have more of a game style programming, which they kind of did. And so it was like, are you better at those kind of things, or are you better at classic CrossFit style stuff? And how are we going to approach these things? So I'm just interested to see how it's going to fold out over the next 2 years, 3 years, once we hopefully get some organization around it, and when it brings in more of a sport component to it.
I think that's going to be really interesting as well. Obviously we couldn't be more biased, right? Like, we're individual coaches for people. We don't do templated programming. But if somebody sets their sights on one sanctional that's in February, imagine how different that training plan needs to look than if somebody sets it for April. It's like, are all the templates going to have like 27 different templates, for all the sanctional events? It's interesting to think about. I agree with you. I think it's a fascinating time right now where people are seeing this open landscape of potential opportunity in sport and the business side, and it's just going to be really interesting to see it play out. Okay, sorry.
I think too it allowed those that were not really regional competitors to, if they're hopefully more realistic now, to be able to step back from that a little bit, because they're like, okay, not only I wasn't making regionals. Now it's sanctionals where all these games competitors are going for the sanctionals. I'm definitely not there yet. So it allows them to step back and focus on the little smaller, more local competitions that they should be focused on in the first place, as opposed to this dream vision of getting to regionals because they're 150 in the open or whatever. Now it's like you're 150 in your region, which means you're non-existent in the sanctional world. So I think that's a good thing too, because it allows people to play the same game on a local level. Like if you're lower RX or even a scaled athlete, you can still pick a competition that's your yearly competition and revolve it around that. It's fun. As far as just fitness in general, the biggest thing that to me is just the enjoyment of fitness and the enjoyment of where people find their fulfillment in their type of fitness. So obviously in my facility here, we've got a lot of different things people are training for, but just in culture in general, there's so many different ways to do fitness now. And I'm not one to say like, that you have to do it this way. Whether it's, Orange Theory, Burn Boot Camp, CrossFit, spin class, swimming, triathlon, whatever, all those things can be done in a variation that can be healthy and long lived. And I think so many people get caught up in like, what do I need to do to lose this extra 10 pounds? Or what do I need to do to get my motivation back? Or what do I need to do to this? And like, just trying to watch people and see what are the people doing that last for 5 to 10 years in whatever they're doing, whether that's a boot camp, whether that's Orange Theory. Because if you're around society enough, you probably know people that have been doing, Pure Bar for 10 years. And it's like, well, I guess that's fine if you enjoy standing, holding onto a bar and squeezing muscles for 10 years, but you've been consistent for 10 years. So like, I have nothing bad to say about that. And so just like trying to figure that out when people come to me with, I need to get my motivation back. I need my mojo back. I'm not eating good. I'm not training like I used to. Like, okay, well, why are you not? Do you not enjoy the training process anymore? Do you not enjoy what you're doing? Because that's really more important than this sacred program that I write for you.
Yeah, gosh, you're saying that really well. James says it really well too. It's like, fitness is so often only about the outcome or the result that somebody gets, as opposed to finding what you enjoy about the process. One of my favorite quotes actually comes from a Linkin Park song of all things. And he says, the journey is more important than the end or the start. And I think that there's so much truth to that. And particularly, I know what you do and all of our coaches do is they try to help that client figure out what about the daily, let's go back to expression, right? What about the daily expression is so powerful and inspiring to them, because the results will just fall out of that, right?
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we don't want results. It just means that finding the fun in the daily habit is so good.
Yeah, because everybody that they look at and think they have the body I want, or they have the fitness that I want, or whatever, if you look at that, and like people have said this about me, and I'm like, if you look back at my life, like I started in the gym when I was 13, 14 years old. I started eating relatively healthy at that time, not super strict by any means. And I haven't missed more than like a week in the last 18 years. Like, it doesn't matter what I was doing. I should have, unless I was just completely screwing everything up, I should have some results and should look a certain way relatively and feel a certain way relatively, just because of that consistency in the long game. It has nothing to do with like this certain type of workout that I did at this certain time. It's just the fact that I've been in health and fitness for the last 18 years, which is more than half my life. So of course it's going to yield some results. There's no way to really necessarily speed that up, unfortunately.
Yeah, gosh, well said. I was going to say long game, and then you said it. So I think we're on the same wavelength. But Mike, I really appreciate it, man. This was really fun. Looking forward to doing this again. So enjoy the rest, and probably got a good long training session ahead of you today or tomorrow.
Yep. Tomorrow.
All right, man.
How's it going?
See ya.